What is going on, guys? Jack here and welcome back to another Football Manager 2020 video. Today we're going to be having a look in detail at the Development Centre. This is one of my favourite new additions to the game. Of course, I got hands-on early access over at Sports Interactive. Massive thank you to them. Again, as always, if you want to see more of these kind of videos, check out the videos we've been uploading lately to the channel. Loads of early Football Manager 20 goodness for you. So yes, today we're looking at the Development Centre. We're going to look at how it functions in game, as well as youth intakes this year, because they are drastically different. I want to cover them in as much detail as I can. So, well, let's get this video in front of us playing, shall we? So, much like other elements of the game, the Development Centre has its own little, introduction, its own little tutorial. It's an area of the game which, if you don't know, essentially acts as a hub for your under-23s and under-18s teams, as well as any players out on loan. It's really, really nice. It centralises a lot of information that was scattered across a lot of screens in the game. If you had a particularly large youth team setup, if you're someone like me who likes to hoard in a load of youngsters, you could lose track of who was who and who was really developing, and this Development Centre I think is going to change my approach to youth quite significantly, or at least help me in my current approach to it. So yeah, you can see the under-23s, as I mentioned, and the under-18 squad are all laid out in here. For this example, we are managing Arsenal. They are licensed in the Arsenal edition of Football Manager this year, which is really cool. Of course, you can pick that up on the FM store. And yeah, you can see just a few of the screens here. So we've got the loans tab as well, which we'll get into in just a second. You can see the new delegation system comes up here. If you don't know, in Football Manager this year, you can really easily delegate individual tasks out to staff, and that is something that you can do with this. So if you feel completely overwhelmed, if there's stuff you're not that into doing, the Development Centre, you don't have to do all of the stuff in it, which is kind of nice. So you can see the main section that we have here on the overview page is first team candidates. This shows us players who are currently in the first team who are very good prospects, or who are just outside the first team who we should be aware of as being players on the cusp of things. And this can be quite good, especially when you first come to a side, just to kind of know who's who. I feel like we've all been there. You're trying to learn your new Football Manager team inside and out. And well, what this is going to do is basically inform you, hey, these are the best players. You can see below that we have a ones to watch section. These are players who, whilst they're not perhaps first team ready just yet, at least in the view of your assistant, are on the cusp of things. They are players who you need to be aware of. So you can see right now at the start of a save game, we have a lot there. In the bottom left, you can see the needs attention section. We are going to jump forward during this video, so you'll see how this screen develops. The irony being that the Development Centre develops as we go through. It feels a little bare bones when you start, but you'll really start to see how useful this is as we go forward. So the first thing we're going to do is actually we're going to pay attention to what was suggested in terms of a few players being loaned out. Of course, there is the new playing times that you can see here, such as star player, important player, squad player. Before going into FM20 and getting hands-on, I hadn't really considered how this would impact loans. Of course, it impacts your own squad in terms of players' expected playing time. But when you've got a youngster, you can be a lot more precise with exactly how much football you want them to be getting with the new proposed playing times. As you can also see, you can propose a preferred position and a preferred role for a player. I don't think either of those are new this year, but they are still there this year. And this is really cool. This just area of the game where now you are going to be told, hey, these are players who maybe should go out on loan. And if you're someone who doesn't want to deal with all of this, you can get a loan manager, which is a new member of staff this year, to deal with loans. One thing that I found really useful, I'm sure you've had it, you offer a player out for loan and you get 20 loan offers in the same day, and it just feels like a bit of a nightmare. What I found myself doing when I was just getting a little bit, with my hands dirty with the game was, I'd have a loan manager automatically accept all loan offers, but then I could manually go through them and reject them, and that is now done via a news item. I know in the past you'd have to go to the transfer tab and then, judge the loan offers there. Now when loan offers are made, there's a lovely little inbox item that has them all in a singular screen, and you can just reject the ones that you don't like and have it to automatically accept the others. So those were just a few little changes which made accessibility way better for me. We've all been there. You offer out 3 or 4 youngsters out for loan, you end up with 40 loan offers, and you kind of mentally shut off and go, yeah, screw it, they can all be accepted. I found with this new way of doing things, I just kind of paid a bit more attention to it, I guess. It felt a lot less like a big chore. As I mentioned with the responsibilities, you can still delegate out lots of other stuff. You can ask for training emails to be received as well from the responsibilities screen. One big component of this year's game is basically the fact that you can have as much or as little control as you want. You can see we had an under 23s and under 18s tab. We also went to the youth intake tab there. We'll talk more about that later in the video. I am going to show a youth intake, so if you're curious about how regens work this year, stick around, you are going to get to see that. Over on the training screens, nothing's too crazily new here. However, in the additional focuses section, as mentioned in my top 10 favourite FM20 features, there are a few new areas of focus, which is really cool to see. So those are some goalkeeping ones, which of course are super useful. When are they not? But you also have the options of aerial, ball control and crossing as three other new options that you have at your disposal. Again, just Football Manager improving its tutorialization and just its accessibility, I guess, with this new mouse over feature where you can mouse over these different focuses and it tells you exactly what they're going to do. I believe last year you kind of had to click on each of these. Now, fortunately for me, I kind of got used to them, but if you're not someone who lives, dreams and breathes Football Manager, it's there now. It's easy to find. So this is all cool. You can see here now we get to the loan offers. As I mentioned, you can see I've got my staff member, my loan manager set to accept all these offers. And then I'm able to look through these loan offers in this inbox item and just reject the ones that I'm not a fan of. You can see all the important information is there. I did spot, or I didn't get to test, with the loan manager, you can basically say, I don't want to automatically accept loan offers to clubs who have a certain level of facilities or below, or at least that's what I interpreted it as. There were some new options there in terms of you could filter things, and I think one of them was a team's facilities, which is obviously useful. When you loan out a player, at least in my case, I often look at the facilities of the club I'm loaning to, and I would favour a club with better youth setup and a better training setup. And that was something that the loan manager seems to be able to do. And again, this is just nice and simple. Previously, you had to go into the transfer screens for this stuff. Whilst it's not strictly the development centre side of things, this is, again, just a big ease of use improvement and something that is going to make that youth development side of things that little bit better. And I didn't know I needed it until I saw it, and I really, really like it. So this is cool. I like this a lot, and that's kind of a growing trend with Football Manager. People ask me, every year, what do I want from Football Manager? I want those little changes that I didn't know I wanted, but once I have them, I struggle to go back to previous Football Managers. Anyway, you can see at this point here, we've now holidayed forward to December. Things have changed, so you'll notice all these graphs everywhere. We have some players who need more attention. This is really, really useful. If a player's out on loan and maybe not doing particularly well, and the staff member thinks we need to chat with them, potentially recall them from loan, he'll let us know that just here. You can see maybe a player's not playing enough on loan. On the flip side, ones to watch, players who are performing well. You can see we have obviously the attribute changes with the little arrows, slightly different colours this year, but nothing too crazy going on there. But they kind of have this overall ability graph, and this is the graph that you see in the Youth Development Centre. You still have the option to look at individual attributes, so this is great. I think any way that you can just show an overall progression of a player is nice. One little thing that I noticed during the build that I was in, and I don't know if this is going to stay like this, that I wasn't a fan of, is basically in previous years on the graph that I was just mousing over, you'd have kind of 8.2, 8.4, 8.6. You can see here it's just 8 and then it jumps to 9. I know that because you don't ever see the 0.2, the 0.4, the 0.6, it might feel a little bit weird and it could have been removed for those reasons. I kind of liked being able to see that minute detail of how close a player was to jumping up a stat, and an attribute, I should say. I don't want to offend anyone by calling attribute stats. I'm a little bit gutted. Gutted is an exaggeration, but I'm a little bit disappointed if that has gone. If it has, I can't imagine it'd be that difficult to add back. So if it becomes a big thing where I'm not the only one offended by this, hey, we might get it back. You can see here a player's current ability in terms of stars is represented on the progress graph. You can see in this case, Sam Greenwood has been improving. The graphs themselves are really useful. I really like that kind of ability to glance at a player and go, right, I can see exactly how this person is trained in the last 5 months, because sometimes player development went under the radar in previous Football Managers, and equally sometimes you wouldn't notice a player not developing because you weren't being told they're doing badly and you weren't being told, hey, they're doing amazing in training, and so they just slipped off the radar. You can see here we've got loads of players who have been developing, and it's really easy just to click on them and see exactly how they're getting on. So those graphs, big improvement this year. Anyway, let's talk about youth intake. If you don't know the game Football Manager, it produces something called regens. These traditionally generate on a specific date every year. That has changed slightly. I'm not sure how it's changed, but not every team in the country gets their regens on the same day. Now you get this new system where you'll get told, around whatever month it is, we're going to have some intake. And then in the months leading up to that intake day, in this example here with Arsenal March, we start getting a candidates preview. And you can see all this different information. We should be excited about the potential of some of the wingers that we've got coming up through the system. You can see we have an English goalkeeper from London who's caught the eye, all this flavour text coming in, and it allows you to prepare for what might happen. And as you can see here, we have our youth intake, my first ever in FM for FM20, and Erin Lambert was the standout player. I know I'm going to get some comments on the regen faces. They are very shiny in this build. I still think they're an improvement over FM19s. A few of them still look a little bit odd, but there's still work being done on them. Of course, this is alpha footage, just to reiterate. But yeah, you can see here, they look slightly more human-like as opposed to the aliens of previous years. So yeah, Erin Lambert in this example was our best player. He was very, very good. He was a centre mid who could play out on the left. And the way that this works now is similar in terms of, your players appear on a specific date. But now there is a hub within the youth development screen where you can view all of these players that come in intake and see lots of useful information about them. So you can see now that we've had our intake, this page gets populated. From here, we can look at reports to see players' best positions, get a good feel at a glance for what we've got going on. Contract offers as well. I'm sure we've all done it. You get your intake, you start offering contracts to a few players, and then you can't remember which you have and you haven't offered contracts to. That is now really easy to take care of with the youth intake contracts view that you saw before. And all in all, this is going to, I think, make just intakes a little bit easier. I didn't really get enough time to experiment and exactly figure out how the intake days work because that has changed. I know Miles Jacobson confirmed over on Twitter, basically, before a player turns to the age of 16, when they're in the background during this period where you're waiting for them to appear, but you're getting a bit of a description, your better players can be poached by other teams. And bigger clubs at top flight leagues will also, maybe inform you during the kind of little preview bit, maybe say, I don't know, at Bolton Wanderers, we've noticed a very good goalkeeper, and what might happen is, depending on the level of your head of youth development, he will try and sign that player. This is all going on in the background because these players don't have profiles until the intake day, but there is a little bit of that realistic dynamic movement going on in game. You hear a lot of stories, particularly in England, of 14-year-olds going to some of the big clubs in the country, and that is somewhat replicated now in FM with this new system, and it's going to put a greater emphasis on your head of youth development than ever before, which I think is a really, really good thing, and I can't stress how nice I think it is just to see this side of the game fleshed out. Youth intake's not changed in years at this point, so to see them given some TLC this year is cool. Wonder if they can take it that little step further. I will obviously be excitedly keeping an eye out for that, but it was one of the things that I was surprised I was so excited about. You can see just quickly we're going to offer a contract to a player, and then in the contract offers view we can see which players we've offered contracts to, so you can very easily sort by potential, offer contracts out, and then just see which players you have already offered contracts to and exactly how much that was. Again, just lots of little usability improvements, I feel like, with the development centre this year, but nice to see just a bit of a change in gameplay in terms of how youth intakes work, particularly if you are someone who loves hoarding regens as much as I do. But anyway, those are just some of my general thoughts on the Youth Development Centre. Really, really like it as a new feature in this year's game. I feel like it adds a lot to the gameplay, particularly just the ability to more closely monitor your team, of course. I only got a couple of days, and within those couple of days, a very limited amount of time to play the game. I had to holiday forward just to get to this point here to show you all this youth candidate stuff. But it's got me excited. Let me know what you made of it down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, do subscribe for more FM20 content. I would love to know, what you thought of this. If this was your first ever video watching, obviously loads of other FM20 content on the channel. Keep an eye out for it. Go watch it if you're watching this in the distant future. And that's all from me today. Thank you for watching, folks. I will see you again soon. It is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.